Okay, we have two bills this morning. We will not be taking up the remaining bills on the list this morning. Ms. Foxworth was making amendments on other bills till 1:30 in the morning, so we will have one short session today to try to knock out the rest of that list, and that'll be it. And I'm planning on us not having to meet tomorrow, so when we're done on the floor, people go home. And then after that, we'll do what we do on whatever bills. We worked a yeoman's job of moving lots of bills. So I think we should be pretty proud of our product, even though there's still bills we haven't gotten to. With that, let's start with 118. And again, just to remind you, we passed a Senate version of virtual schools. The House had a bill which was not a cross-file. Let me reiterate, not a cross-file. They actually accentuated other parts of virtual learning, particularly during an emergency time during executive order. So they focused on sort of different things, and we've tried to meld the two ideas in a coherent fashion. And I can tell you the last 48 or 72 hours, Ms. Goodman has been using her crafting style of taking the lead of trying to get the bill in as good a shape and a thoughtful shape to bring to you today. So with that, Ms. Goodman.
1163.
I'm sorry, 1163. Right. I apologize. And you have a reprint
right. So
in front of you.
Good morning. So you have in front of you the reprint here for House Bill 1163. This bill now will contain three bills: Senate Bill 362, Senate Bill 717, and House Bill 1163. So this is a lot on virtual requirements. I think we'll just walk through it. It'll be a little bit easier.
And the expectation is at 12 o'clock today, Ways and Means will meet, and they will be looking at the Senate bill using the vehicle that I sponsored and adopting the same amendments. That is the hope and expectation. Obviously, things can happen, but that's the hope. Please.
Yeah. So starting on page 2 of your reprint, at the bottom of the page, line 30, that drops in from the Senate Bill 362, that provision that requires teacher preparation programs to add training in the skills and techniques for teaching effectively in a virtual learning environment. The next page is on page 5 of the reprint. So what you're seeing struck, in case you're wondering, the House did strike their pilot Flip the Classroom proposal program. So on page 5 begins after line 12 there. This is Senate Bill 717, which is those virtual education days that county boards may now use after they've finished all of their snow days for the year. And no changes were made to this bill.
And we passed that version, Senator Simon Ayers' bill,
Right.
4 or 5 weeks ago. They wanted to put anything dealing with virtual all in the same bill, so that was their call.
Page 6 of your reprint, starting there on line 13, it requires the department to establish a statewide universal learning management system. It allows the counties to opt into that learning system. If they do opt in, the department can provide technical support and professional development, but they may not do that if the county has their own learning management system.
And just take a minute, what a learning management, these are the platforms the school systems have used. They created them mostly, or bought them, during the pandemic. So it was the platform they used for virtual learning for their systems. I think 3 or 4 generally are the popular ones used around the state. What are some of their names?
Canvas and Schoology. Yeah.
So that's what a system is.
Okay, and now we're going to take a long leap here, 5. It says page 16 of 28 at the top of your reprint.
So,
Sure.
6, on line 24, where we move to the May, is there any time at all in which they need to notify someone that they have their system, or is there any?
So because of the situation with the COVID-19 and going to virtual learning, pretty much every system has adopted a learning management system. So the previous language was if they hadn't done it by this August, they would have to adopt the statewide system.
Yeah,
But there was
Yeah, I don't
no
know.
county that was in that
Yeah, no,
situation.
no. Okay, great, all righty.
So,
and pages 7 through were things that
right.
we thought,
So they made changes to, virtual, we have a program called Virtual Learning Opportunities Program, which is essentially about the development and review of virtual courses. And the Senate was not ready to accept some of the changes that the House wanted to make there. So that was all stricken from HB 1163.
That's good.
So beginning on page 16 and line 23, essentially, this bill adopts this committee's SB 362 in place of the provisions that the House had for virtual schools. There was consensus that our bill was very thoughtful and it worked with the stakeholders, and that their provisions, there was not really many in conflict, and that this was a more developed product, so this part was adopted. There were just some minor changes in the bill. Some of them were, the House was pretty adamant, they did not want the department to be able to adopt a virtual school. And even though this committee had previously voted not to accept that, we thought that that was a worthwhile to give on that.
I mean, I spoke on that previously. I mean, I think not giving the state the option to have a virtual school, for example, for the home and hospital program, is completely ridiculous.
I don't think the state was craving, I don't think the state was craving the authority to do it. And each county can do a home and hospital. I mean, we just had a bill on that, which I think would allow.
Not if you disallow the state from having a virtual school. I mean, I've talked to the superintendent about this.
Right, and they told us that they didn't care either way.
Seriously.
Yep,
When?
over the many conversations I've had.
Okay. I mean,
Senator, we can always come back next year on that. I don't think there's going to be,
could you just remind me while we're on this part of the bill, where does it say that we've struck in the ability for the state to have a statewide virtual school for any reason whatsoever?
So if you look at page 16 of the reprint,
Thank you.
and you look down at 7-1401 in line C, it says sponsor. And sponsor was previously defined as means the department or a county board having a fiduciary responsibility for the operation of a virtual school. And it strikes the department. So they're no longer allowed to be a sponsor of a virtual school. There's no line numbers. It's down there under C, subsection C.
and in some ways, we've crafted this like the charter school bill, and the law is similarly shaped for the charter school as well.
Okay. Going to the next page, these are not numbered. Sorry, I wasn't thinking this morning here. So if you look under 17-1401.13, so the provisions of the public school operating under a virtual education plan, the next subtitle, don't apply in this just to virtual schools. The House was concerned that these virtual schools were not getting public hearings. So they asked to require that final approval be given by the state board, and because that had to happen in an open meeting. So in this reprint, there are various technical changes made to include that concept. As you can see down in 7-1402, A3, it says each virtual school shall receive final approval from the state board. And consequently, because they give approval, they can also have to give final approval to revoke a virtual school. The language got a little muddy in subsection E here, but we insisted that a for-profit had to remain, so a county board may not contract with a for-profit entity, but may contract with a nonprofit to operate or administer a virtual school, just seeking some clarity. Also, I didn't highlight it, but there's also some clarity in here that they can adopt a framework of multiple counties under a written agreement agreeing to have a virtual school. So it doesn't have to be a county board. It can be a county board or multiple county boards under a written agreement. Just some clarity on that issue. It's somewhere in here.
No, given the conversation
I'm
we've
sorry,
had,
page 16.
we explicitly wanted to
Indeed.
add that language.
Right. So it says a virtual school means a public school established by a county board or
D1
multiple counties.
D1,
Yeah,
near the bottom,
yeah.
16, D1, about 9 lines from the bottom.
It's right under the sponsor definition. Okay.
Established by a county board or multiple county boards under written agreement.
So we wanted to make sure that those innovative frameworks were preserved and for people to be able to handle those and keep those programs viable.
So just going back to so if we're so who's this, I mean, you say the sponsor has to be a county board, but then a
Right.
virtual school,
Or multiple county boards.
I mean, so is C and D1, do those how do those go together?
They're definitions. So a sponsor, essentially a sponsor is an entity that can establish a virtual school and has responsibility for the virtual school.
So who is the sponsor of a multiple county board school?
Multiple counties under a written agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we keep moving. There was a slight change in the language. If you go, let's see here. You'll see in the middle of the page, it says 7-1404. At the top of the page, they sought some clarity on that 10% of students cap. And it would say, not more than 10% of students who would otherwise attend a single public school in the county in any school year. They wanted to make sure that it wasn't just at the inauguration of the school, but it was a continuing requirement that no school could have more than 10% of its normal enrollees. The House sought some clarity, too, on the lottery system to ensure that the least served or historically underrepresented populations got additional weight in a lottery system. So that was clarified under subsection, that's D2. So the criteria must be based on demographic diversity under subsection E, and subsection E added socioeconomic as an additional category.
Vice Chair.
Thank you. Stacy? How do you do a lottery and end up with diversity? I mean,
Well-
isn't that contradictory?
It's sort of, but it's the same thing that we do with the charters. You give additional weight to certain applications. So in general, certain applications now have additional when they plug it into the algorithm, and even if it comes up, if they have a, some can rise to the top. But we do it for charter schools, so.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Riley.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go back up to the top of the page, the 10%. So, not more than 10% of the students who would otherwise attend a single public school in the county in any school year may enroll in a virtual school established by the county board. So, in Anne Arundel County, we have high schools with, I'm just going to focus on high schools, 900 in Southern High School to 2,200 up in the northern part of the county. So 10% of the students for all the high schools or for the biggest high school?
No, for any, so you can't, for example, Bates Middle School, you can't have 10% of the students who would otherwise be in one single public school be in that virtual school. That's to make sure that there is opportunities for all students across the county to be able to get into a slot.
So it's restricted by school?
Yes.
Yeah,
I get it, I
the
get it.
intent
Is not to empty out the schools.
of a group of parents who
Yeah.
don't want to be in this
Yeah.
community.
Right.
That they take 20% and they shift over,
Yeah, but my point is, it's per school, not per,
correct.
Correct.
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, moving on to, okay. The rest following for the next 2 pages was no changes at all. I think, make sure here. Student engagement. At the top of the page that starts, a virtual school is strongly encouraged to, subsection B. The House felt strongly,
Oh, let's,
oh,
okay.
You find it?
Are people there? It's 3 pages before page 7, marked page 17. It's a B1 at the top. It's on the left-hand side. Are we all there? Okay.
so this provision would require a virtual school or strongly encourage them to hold in-person orientation sessions to provide the extensive amount of informational materials that's required just above that language. Can't require it because this is a county-wide and there's some concern that, of being able to get every student and the staff together. So this language strongly encourages the holding of those in-person orientations to make sure that the students and the parents receive this information, especially about available services. And then if they can't hold those in person, then they need to hold at least one Zoom or, online orientation.
And if I could, we think it's important that the parents and students know what they're getting into. And also what wraparound services are available. And how, like, athletics will take place. I mean, that they can participate in their home school, but they may have to get to their home school. So we want full transparency so people know what they're doing. And we think it's optimal to have in-person if possible, but if not, there'll be a virtual introduction kind of program.
At the bottom of that page, there's a slight addition that requires a virtual school to have a planned staffing model, including certain provisions.
Yes, Senator Riley.
Thank you. Back up near the top of the page, the new C, number 1, a virtual school may not provide funds for the purchase of instructional programs or materials. Is that trying to say that you can't buy a standalone software course and put it into the system and have it paid for by the virtual school?
No, you can't give them money to do that. You can't hand cash to a family and say, here, you purchase that. That's what it means.
I got, the school may not provide the funds.
Yeah, if you look at number 2,
I understand that.
well,
That's pretty
it's
explicit.
to differentiate, I think.
And that's existing law.
Okay. Well, just because it's existing law doesn't mean we always know what it means. But thank you very much. I understand now.
Okay. And then we go to the next page. And starting at the bottom third, this is the new HB 1163. So it took their, I'm sorry.
So,
Okay.
again, to be clear, to this point, we adopted Senator Simoner's bill verbatim and about 92% of the bill we passed that had my name on it. So now we're going into language that was in their bill and not in our bill.
Right.
Senator Washington first.
New section 7-1406.
Okay.
So A1,
Yes.
where there's the original language, it was a teacher employed by, and then it was assigned to. So what's contemplated in that difference between employed and assigned?
So this was an MSEA amendment that we had voted on in this committee, or you voted on in this committee.
yeah, just wanted to
And
know.
essentially, the virtual schools aren't actually hiring teachers. The county hires them, and then they assign
Got it.
them to various
Got it.
assignments, I guess. Assign them to assignments, yes. I'm tired, sorry. All right. And then on the next page, beginning where it says subtitle 14A, Operation of Public Schools During a Prolonged State of Emergency Virtual Education Plans. So this begins the ideas from House Bill 1163, which was tagged as temporary virtual schools. But it was agreed that this is confusing language because these aren't virtual schools, as Senator Washington brought up during the hearing. These are essentially public schools that are operating under different conditions. So that's, the change in language was to avoid some confusion. So mostly with this bill, there's some reorganization, and some change in terminology just for some clarity purposes. So that's what's going on here. That's why it looks different, is mostly just for those purposes.
So the key thing to look at is C, at the bottom of that page. So we're essentially talking about when there's a state of emergency declared by the governor like we did under the pandemic. So this is separate from post-pandemic virtual schools. This is during that crisis period. So that's what, and again, this came from Delegate Washington's bill. They spent a lot of time in some of the pages we X'd out that we thought were a little too down the rabbit hole. But that's what this section addresses. Senator Hester.
So just a question. So a state of emergency, does that apply to the whole state or can it apply to a specific area?
It can apply to a county. I mean, the governor can declare a county a state of emergency. It
That was my
doesn't
question.
require it be the whole state.
Thank you.
These plans are county-specific because they're done by each of their county boards. It's not a statewide plan. So those two pages have definitions. They adopted a definition of virtual education that was similar to the one in virtual schools. And begins here, it says, if there is a prolonged state of emergency, a county board may transition the public schools in the county to virtual education under an approved virtual education plan. They have to use the continuity of learning plan they adopted during the 2020 school year as the basis for it to start their plan. And then each plan has to include certain components, and that's on page 17. The next few pages are requirements that have to be in each component of the plan.
Stacy?
Yes.
D1 and D2 seem a little contradictory.
Where are you?
7-1406.
Oh, you're way back.
I'm starting slowly this morning.
In what way?
D1 seems like it's going to be flexible, and D2 sounds like it's going to be mandated.
What's flexible about one? So, that amendment was to incorporate, for example, certain teachers could be certified but it's not like a full certification. That's, what do they call the resident teacher certificates? They have, and for adjunct people who come into those, we didn't want to exclude those individuals from being able to teach in a virtual school.
Right.
Because
but-
it says here, a teacher's certificate, and there are other professional types of certificates, and they didn't want to exclude those individuals.
Are we talking the same thing?
No.
Okay.
I don't know what teacher certificate you're looking at.
Okay.
You said,
What are you
oh, you're
pointing-
looking, you're looking at D. I was looking at A. I apologize.
D1, D2. So D1 seems like it's going to offer flexibility based on A, B, and C, multiple factors, including grade level, subject matter, and teacher workload. And then D2 says, yeah, the size actually, regardless of what we said in D1, should be consistent with the average class size for in-person classes. It seems a little contradictory.
No. I think the intent, and again, Ms. Goodman can help here, is to look at the grade level, the band, whether it's fourth grade or second grade or a high school English class.
Right.
And then D2 is to say it should be consistent with that number.
I read that.
I
Okay.
think it works mostly as a ceiling. It's supposed to be, there was, the way it was originally drafted before it was requested a change is that virtual, just because it's virtual, it doesn't mean you can cram every kid into there.
Right.
So there may be differences in class size based on multiple factors, and they should look at that. However, I think originally it says they may not exceed that, but there was an amendment requested, and the committee accepted that in the last version that said they would be consistent instead with that.
That the exceed, if it's a ceiling, because in other words, you can't have 100 students in a virtual classroom. I think that's what we were trying to do. So is this one of those, they just,
This
could
is,
we talk about getting that to be shall exceed or clarifying that language, or do we?
that is
we've
from
already
Senate Bill
all agreed.
362. That's
Okay.
the
Oh, this
language.
is how it was
Yeah.
passed?
Yes.
Ah, okay. All right then. So we could also clean it up next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
The stakeholders
All
felt
right.
comfortable, I
Okay,
think, with
that's
this
fine.
language. Look, the idea
we're
is.
so close. Yeah, I
it
don't
should-
wanna-
It should replicate the average in a bricks and mortar
Yeah,
school.
we get
But
it.
we can't say what that number is because a physics class or an
Right.
English 9 or a third grade are going to be different. So
Yeah.
this is the closest we could come.
No, I got it. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So, as I said, on page 17 are the components required in a virtual education plan that's adopted by a county under these conditions. Page 18 starts where it goes through the list of what the components are and what's required in each component.
And again, this is under emergency conditions like we had under COVID.
It allows a county to adjust based on circumstances and has some timelines in there for the department to approve those plans.
On the top of page 17, there's talking about a 2020 to 21 year school year to form the plan. So we're just recommending that they
They start
do
there.
what? They start with what they did and build out from there.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Pardon me? So this is the start of HB 1163.
This is all
Yes.
House language or rewritten House language, replacing it.
Starting on page 19, in this section, operating under a virtual education plan, the principal has to require staff to do regular check-ins with students, make sure they're not subject to additional stressors. If they are, then they would be given resources and access to help. Subsection B, starting on line 33, requires the development of a behavioral health plan for the school.
That's on 19. Please.
Page 18, so this is all describing virtual education, which I'm glad we clarified between schools and education. And so it's still that the state board, there's many opportunities, well, the state board, the plan is submitted to the state board, and then the state board accepts it. If the board, and then the board could, or the state board could return the plan for modifications. Is there a amount of time that happens?
So within 10 calendar days of receipt of a plan, the state board shall accept or return.
Right.
And then if it needs to be adjusted, they have 5 days after the plan is returned.
Okay, I don't see,
That's in lines 24 through 26.
oh, yes, I do, thank you. Okay, awesome, thank you.
Senator Hester.
So I've been texting back and forth with MSDE, and they said that they would like to have the authority and think it's a bad step backward from current law to remove it. They also pointed out that the final approval authority should be the department, not the state board, that they feel like that's a departmental decision, and the state board will open it up to politics. And that the statewide learning system, they feel like it's gonna be hard to do a procurement by the date in the date in the, given in the bill. So I hear you that, and I said this yesterday on the floor, we don't want perfect to be the enemy of the good, but I'm just felt like we shouldn't know what the state department is saying.
That's what we're doing right now. I mean, texting back and forth with the board when there's I mean, I get it. So we shouldn't represent that maybe somebody doesn't want it. But I do think we are 2 days out, we're doing a lot, and we should really know that we can improve things. So, you know, unless it violates law, unless it is something that's going to be absolutely damaging, you know, particularly if we're dealing with, so at this time. So I think we should apply that as well to this deliberation. So to go back and to change it to state board versus, so that's interesting, so, yeah, so what is the role of the state board generally, if I could clarify? What is the role of the state board?
Set policy.
Set policy, right? So is this policy about virtual education, correct? I'm just asking, because I mean, you know, it's not, if we can defend it. So if this is policy, then I would think the state board could be the entity to determine whether or not it's correct or not.
I think it's legal, it's a policy question.
It's just for us to just decide.
Correct.
So we could decide for today that this is how we will go, and then we can also see how it goes. And should there come a time where we need to change that, where we can actually have the secretary testify in front of us, and we can all go through this process all together, then we can address that.
I think it was
Okay.
analogous to you know, in a county, when they establish a new public school, it goes to the county board for their approval. It's not just the superintendent. And the House, that was the analogy that they gave us. It was conducted and open, and the county board approves that. And
Right.
they felt this was similar.
Yeah, and I think it's so much of this is so much better than the way it came in. Again, I think unless something is violating our Constitution, really, certainly people can vote for it or not, but, you know, I think we could just make the policy decisions. We had a committee of representatives, I guess, working this out over the last couple of weeks, and I trust that they did the best that they could in the time that we have. So that's just my position on switching from state board to department, that we would need to have an actual hearing conversation about it more fully. And also, at the end of the day, they're not writing the policy, we are, so, thank you,
Okay,
that's where I am.
that being said, let's let Ms.
Finish it.
Goodman finish the last few pages, and if someone wants to offer amendments, they can. And we'll vote them up or vote them down, and we can take what the good senator said to heart or not. So we'll come back, and if you want to offer one, you may.
On page 21, this language requires the public school to establish a system of learning supports, essentially to mitigate any potential learning loss, but just to make sure that schools are monitoring how well students are performing under these conditions. It requires, starting at the bottom of that page in 23, if health guidance allows, it requires them to open learning centers. If you recall, that was done during the 2020 pandemic for certain students in the small groups. On page 22, it's a data collection piece for if you're operating under these conditions, they want to know how things are going. So that's a required piece. To page 25.
As you can see, 23, 24 were all stricken.
Right, those are more course things and a grant program, which we have no money for, so it got stricken. On page 25, there's some training for teachers in the provision of virtual education while it's under a virtual education plan, requires professional development and supports, and funding for professional development, and some mental health support for teachers and other professionals if required. Requires the department to expand computer and internet security for virtual education. And each school system has to dedicate at least one staff member to oversee security. I should say cybersecurity. On page 27, this is general regulations, adoption of those requirements. Page 27 and 28 is about community schools and requires them to address and mitigate effects of learning loss. Also on page 28, as you'll see on section 2, that was in SB 362, that is a study on an appropriate balance in the number of hours of synchronous and asynchronous learning to be done in collaboration with local school systems. Section 3 is the grandfather clause and accountability for systems that continue to operate that are not in compliance with the law for virtual schools. Section 4 is a study by MSDE on best practices for virtual learning and education with a report to the General Assembly by September 1, 2024. And there's a provision that prohibits the development or approval of elementary grade band level virtual schools during the time the study is being conducted.
Okay, that's the bill. It encompasses, like I said, about 95% of the one we passed, the Senate version, 100% of Senator Simon Ayers, and a significant amended version of the House bill in a very significant way. A lot came from Senator Washington's concerns she raised during the hearing. Senator Gallion, followed by Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This, I guess, a couple of kind of policy questions for us to talk about briefly. On the permanent virtual schools, I'm not talking about the, this, like the state of emergency part, but it looks like this wouldn't be for pre-K and kindergarten, correct?
Correct.
I have some concerns even with, like first, second, third graders. I just think it's really important for these young children to have those social interactions, be there. I mean, I have a daughter that was affected, even from, we had to do the mask because of the pandemic, but it affected her speech. There's no doubt about that. And also, at the time she was in kindergarten, we tried virtual for a while with her, and we ended up pulling the other girl and homeschooling her a while because it just wasn't working. So I appreciate pre-K and K not being in there. I just have a really hard time with first, second, third graders not being in that social setting, the in-person interaction. So that's my concern. I guess that would be kind of what you consider a policy question.
Senator, I agree with you, first of all. I am 100% in agreement. And as Ms. Goodman said, we are holding off for a year on approving new elementary.
2 years.
Till the study is done.
2 years.
2 years. for some of those very same reasons. So rather than put it in permanently, you couldn't have it, because I think we talked about that when we talked about 360, whatever that bill number was. So I agree with you. So, and the House also wanted to slow down elementary. So they wanted to say permanently, we put that on hold for 2 years. So if they're in place now, we're not closing them down as long as they fulfill everything else. But we're putting a pause for approving elementary until that report's back. So I agree with you. Senator Cardoza.
So going to the page after page 16, so it's not numbered.
Okay.
Section E, a county board may not contract with a for-profit entity, but may contract with a nonprofit to operate or administer a virtual school for the county board. My question is there anywhere in the bill that addresses the existing virtual schools?
It's in the uncodified section. It's the exact same language that gives them an extra 18 months to convert, to fulfill the rest of the obligations. So that's in the uncodified section,
Where is that?
page 28, A,
28A.
last line.
Section 3.
Section 3, A1, the next to last line. I told the House that we made a commitment to allow them to continue, and we have to hold that
And
to that.
how long is the time frame?
Through the 23-24 school year.
Okay, so
So we actually give them 2 more years.
So just to be clear, we have a letter from the school superintendent, state superintendent. 3 times he notes in the letter that pre-existing virtual programs, including those run by for-profit providers, should be allowed to continue to operate so long after a time-bound startup period they are providing their students a high-quality education.
Senator, we can relitigate that. We debated this on the floor for 2 hours in committee.
So I'm just trying to understand, in this reworked version with the
It was
House,
the exact same.
the
agreement.
existing programs, even if they are meeting, producing positive student outcomes, would still be shut down after
Yes.
this timeframe,
This prohibits, just like charter schools, for-profits from running our public schools.
even if they're successful, positive student outcomes.
We've had this debate 12
Okay,
times.
I'm just clarifying, thank you.
Okay, the bill is amended. First of all, we need a motion. It's been moved, it's been seconded. If anybody wants to offer amendments, this is the time. But Senator.
I want to be clear on the process going forward, because this wasn't originally a cross-file, but now it's kind of a cross-file. So if we add an amendment to the bill, what happens, like, on the other side of the house?
We came to tentative agreement on this language. We were going to proffer it, and I assume at 12 o'clock, they're going to proffer it. And today is Friday. So they were the ones who suggested this language. So my guess is they're probably not going to accept it, but I can't speak for them.
And then what happens if we pass this bill as amended and they pass their bill as amended differently?
We go to conference.
Then we have to go to conference sometime on Saturday or Sunday.
It's dead.
Right.
Can I just not offer them, but say what?
Well, you said it, Senator. You would like the state board to have authority to set up virtual. We have heard different opinions. I don't think there are going to be 50 schools that are going to apply next year. And I don't think the state superintendent wants to create new virtuals next year under their auspices. I just don't get that sense from my conversations. But it doesn't exclude us from taking this up next year. I don't know what else to tell you.
Okay, the other technical thing was that in order to do the learning management system, they say that they would need until August 2024.
So the timeline is a little tight on that, for sure. And I'm sure the House would accept that.
For which section, Senator?
For the procurement of the learning management system, I don't know. My pages aren't numbered.
Yeah, I think that's a technical change. I don't think they will have a problem with that. Because it's, my guess is most school systems are going to stick with what they develop themselves, this to have another option out there. So if you think they need a couple more months, can we find the page on that? That's in the front, is that right?
Page 6. Yeah, it's a little tight.
Okay. What do you suggest, Senator?
August 2024.
Well, yeah.
We have, I'm sorry, look, where is it? Okay.
I'm checking, I was just checking to see.
Could find out.
Senator, let's do this. Let me suggest we move it back a year to September 2023. We can pass an emergency bill before this happens and change that date. And hopefully, they will see this as a minor thing.
Okay.
So that gives us time.
I would accept that.
So just for the record, on page 6, line 13, it becomes September 1, 2023. And on line 20, it becomes August 31, 2023. Any objection to that?
So the last point I wanted to see, your opinion on, Mr. Chair, was about the, whether the House would feel about the approval of the state board versus the department. My understanding is that currently the charter schools are approved by the department and then the appeals are taken to the board. Could we not do the same thing for the virtual schools, or is that a major issue with the House?
Again, I don't want to speak for them. They were the ones who pushed this, is all I can tell you. And so, again, I think we come back in 9 months, we can pass an emergency bill if that becomes an obstacle. So I would suggest we not move that, because I just don't know where they are, and it came from them. So I don't want to kill this. I'd like to have some laws in place going forward.
Yeah, I don't want to kill it either.
Yep.
Just seeing this for the first time this morning, so.
And yeah. Okay, the bill as amended with the date change. Senator Washington.
Yeah, I was going to move that amendment. And also, Stacey, I want to understand that, I guess somewhat in contrast to the cyber bill, which was, all over and then kind of pieced together. These are actually 3 bills that we've deliberated and worked through and passed in some format and then put together in a single bill. So it's a little, I just want to make sure that that's, so when we're talking about it on the floor or defending it. And so, and we made significant, I agree, sort of improvements to the House versions, streamlining, getting some of the micromanaging, that was in there. I don't mean that derogatorily, but, getting rid of a lot of that prescriptive language. Took almost whole cloth Senator Simon Ayers' bill.
Oh, it's whole cloth.
It's whole cloth in this bill. So this is actually.
It is not a change in purpose,
it's
which
not a
would be the
change,
problem,
right,
because this
right.
all involved virtual education.
Right.
It's all a change in purpose.
Yeah, yeah,
If we had dumped in something like
So we've-
alcoholic
we've
beverages, yes, that would
Right,
be a
we've
problem.
discussed this bill multiple times.
Right.
Okay, great, thank
Okay.
you.
The bill as amended, roll call. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to publicly state, we have some of our legislation over in the House. It could have easily passed as is. We're incorporating legislation like mine into this bill, which is now forcing me to vote against my own legislation. I just don't see the need for that. But as they say, it is what it is. I just wanted to put that on the record.
Yes. The bill with a one amendment, changing the date, pushing both in two places back a year. And we all hope that they will incorporate it in their 12 o'clock voting session. Roll call.
If we find something else, and since it is a House bill, it can be amended on the floor, correct? Like if there's something, if we were to talk to the House about this approval process, could we offer that amendment on the floor because it hasn't been offered in committee?
Look, anybody can offer anything on the floor. I don't, no. I don't want to get into I think it is very secondary to having I believe the most important aspect of this bill, and I'm the Senate sponsor of what is now a cross-file, is having rules of the road for virtual schools to make sure they're quality with quality instruction and class size. And I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. You know, I don't know how many more schools will apply to become, if Howard adds 2 or Anne Arundel adds 1 or whatever. If they are following the rules of the road, I don't know how they're going to be rejected by either the state superintendent or the board, the state board. I think that is very tertiary to the issue before us, and I think pursuing that is a fool's errand on 2 days left of the session. And I don't think anything will happen in the next 9 months that this potential obstacle is going to be a crisis situation. So I just wouldn't pursue it, Senator. I mean, but again, anybody can raise any amendment from the floor, and they have that right. And if the House likes it or doesn't like it, they will do what they do. And beyond that, I can't tell. As it is with cybersecurity, with their amendments on third reader. Roll call.
Senator Kagan? Aye. Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Lamb?
I think it's a good bill, yes.
Senator Lamb, yes. Senator Hester?
Yes.
Senator Hester, yes. Senator Ellis?
Yes.
Senator Ellis, yes. Senator Gallion? Senator Gallion, no. Senator Carozza? No. Senator Carozza, no. Senator Washington? Yes. Senator Washington, yes. Senator Riley? No. Senator Riley, no. Senator Patterson?
Yes.
Senator Patterson, yes. Senator Simonaire? No. Senator Simonaire, no. Senator Penske?
Yes.
Senator Penske, yes. 11-0. I'm sorry, 7-4. 7-4.
Wow. I couldn't even pull that one. Okay, passes 7-4. We have one more bill, and they know we're going to be late. Not that it's a package, but they are, we want to take up the mental health bill. That's 118. Ms. Goodman?
All right, so there should be amendments from this that were attached to the vote packet yesterday. HB 118, Public Schools, Student Attendance, Excused Absences for Mental Health. This bill establishes that a student's absence due to mental health needs is a lawful absence from public school attendance. A local board must excuse a limited absence due to a student's mental health needs, provided the student who is a minor has permission from their parent or guardian for the absence. A local board may not require a note from a physician to excuse such an absence. A student who is absent due to mental health needs to be informed of the opportunity to meet with school mental health specialist with an appropriate period of time after returning to school to discuss the student's mental health needs caused by the absence. A local board may adopt policies and procedures to carry out the bill's requirements. There were 2 amendments offered, one from the sponsor, Delegate Washington, who in his amendment strikes the definition of mental health specialist, but otherwise leaves the bill intact. There's a,
What is it, how does it change the mental health definition?
it just strikes the definition of school mental health specialist. All those names that are listed there,
So all A is removed?
right, correct. And then it's just retabulated.
Okay.
The second amendment was offered by Senator Lamb, and this strikes the bill as written. And it substitutes a requirement that the department and each county board adopt an attendance policy for public school students that includes specified items, and then requires the school to provide information to the student and parents if the student's absence was due to a behavioral health need. There's additional ones over there. Here. Yeah,
I'll get the next one. Okay.
For which?
Three?
this one, you have it in front of you.
This,
This. Yes,
is that thing?
yes, that's the one.
Who needs one?
Let's first put the bill on the, before us. So it's been moved, it's been seconded. So the bill is before us. Senator Lamb has an amendment. Senator Lamb?
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill that came in was the same bill as the bill that was filed last year as well. I think there was some concern, at least I had some concern, that it was, while the intention, I agree with the intention to not treat mental illnesses any different than physical illnesses, differently than physical illnesses, I think my concern was that the bill is drafted actually either by intention or by accident, actually ends up treating mental health conditions differently than physical health conditions. And so this amendment is intended to really get at the intent of what the sponsor was trying to do, which is saying that these behavioral health conditions need to be treated the same as somatic health, which is physical health conditions. And it puts some protections in place to help advance that fact, and also provides requirements for linkages back to community health, community behavioral health resources that are also stipulated earlier in the prior blueprint bill too. So it creates some of those linkages there that wasn't there before. It also removes all of the mental health specialist definition. It just kind of gets wrapped up in those definitions that are not fully, I think, well prescribed.
Okay, I'm going to assume that's on the floor, and I'm going to offer an amendment to the amendment. I think the senator's approach is good. I think A and 1, and B are and 4 and B are fine. I think small 2 and 3 are sort of add-ons which are not focused on this bill. So I would amend the good senator's bill minus number 2 and number 3 and adopt the rest of it. I just think the bill came in as about mental health days, and bringing special education and discipline in are sort of for another day. So I would amend, friendly or not, I would amend it down because I agree with you. This is very clear than as the bill came in. So
Sure. So for the record, 2 and 3 were addressing concerns that disability rights Maryland had brought up, but I will take it as a friendly. So
Okay.
in the record, they have some concerns with 2 and 3, but we'll let that go.
okay, so the amended amendment from Senator Lamb would strike 1 through 21 on page 2, put in a new A1, and then 4 would become 2, and then there would be a B in terms of providing resources if there are mental health concerns. Any objection to the amended amendment from Senator Lamb? Please.
So, in the reprint, does the amendment strike the part where they wouldn't need a note from a physician? I mean, we're talking about, and I agree with you, kind of putting this more in correlation with a physical illness where you would need that. So would you need the note from the physician for this?
So
Senator,
currently, you don't need a note from a physician. The parent can just sign the student out. Only the individual school systems are allowed to have a policy at which point above a certain number of days, so chronic illnesses then could require a provider to have to sign off on it. So each school system can have a policy that over a certain number of days, you have to submit a
That's when you
provider's
need to note,
Yeah,
over a certain amount of days.
right.
George, I think it's over 5 or 10, you need an actual doctor's note.
Right.
But if you're homesick and you have a cold, you don't need a doctor's note.
Right.
And so the idea would be if you're home
this
with
is just like for a
stress
day.
or mental.
This is
for-
like just taking a day here and there, not. like-
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, I just have a little concern about, I want to make sure folks don't, but I can think how I was as a senior in high school, wanting to get out of there, and especially in about this time of year. I just want to make sure it's not abused for, for days off. I
Well, it
don't
would still
know.
need a note,
Yeah.
and if there's no note, it's an unexcused absence, and whatever the policy is in that
So basically, you
jurisdiction.
just need your parent to go along with you.
That's true whether it's physical or mental.
Right.
Right.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Procedurally, yesterday I offered an amendment. You asked for movement, second. People offer an amendment now, you just say, oh, put it in. I mean, why is it all so different? When I put it out for what I consider an amendment, and when others do it, it's different procedure. I'm very sensitive to that, and I think it's wrong.
Just for a second, let me go back. Is there a second for Senator Lamb's amendment? I'm sorry? Okay.
Fairness is fairness, and I will see here in this committee.
Okay. The bill as amended, Senator Simon Ayer.
And maybe you can help me with the current policy and then how this affects it. When it says the department of each county shall adopt, is it current that there's a standard policy statewide and each board currently has their own policy? And then this would just replicate that?
Right. Each board has their own policy as to how many days you have that you can be out with a parent's signature before you need a doctor's or provider's note.
Discussion. The bill is amended, roll call.
Senator Kagan? Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Lamb?
Yeah.
Senator Lamb, yes. Senator Ellis? Senator Gallion? Senator Gallion, yes. Senator Carozza? Yes. Senator Carozza, yes. Senator Washington? Yes. Senator Washington, yes. Senator Riley? Yes. Senator Riley, yes. Senator Patterson? Senator Patterson, yes. Senator Simonaire? Yes. Senator Simonaire, yes. Senator Ellis?
Yes.
Senator Ellis, yes. And Senator Penske? Yes. Senator Penske, yes. 10-0-1.
10-0-1. We will adjourn for now. I would like to maybe have one short voting session to knock out those bills that were on that list. So just keep aware. I don't know when the second session is going to be, so we can go over to the Senate floor. Thank you. Thank you very much.